Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
My guest today on the Cognitive Crucible is MAJ Scott Hall, who is the U.S. Army Cyber G39 Influence Branch and our Cyber Trans-Regional Information Advantage Detachment Lead Information Advantage Planner at Fort Eisenhower, Georgia. And the Trans-Regional Information Advantage Detachment can also be abbreviated TIAD. You might hear TIAD a few times during this discussion. Scott Hall, welcome to the Cognitive Crucible.
Hey, John, thanks very much for having me. Longtime listener of the show. I really love the space that you guys have here.
Awesome. Longtime listener, first time caller, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And to our audience, before we get going here, we'd just like to let everybody know that Major Hall's opinions are his own and do not reflect the opinions, policies of the U.S. Army, DoD, or any government agency. So the conversation I'd like to have with you today, Scott, will cover a recent article that you got published in your thought leadership related to synchronizing effects in the information environment and improving decision making. But before we get into these topics, could we please start by getting your assessment of our strategic landscape, or if you prefer, the times in which we live?
Absolutely. Honored to kind of answer this question. I know you've asked this of a lot of great thought leaders, but so from what I'm seeing is that we are currently witnessing a significant and complex battle over control of narratives, both domestically and globally. This battle is not new. It has been a culmination of decades of adversarial influence campaigns that have slowly but steadily compounded upon each other. These campaigns have worked to undermine trust in institutions, distort facts, and see division between and within societies. This is exacerbated by failures within trusted institutions and caused by individuals unwittingly or wittingly impacted by the same compounded influences. Adversaries, including state and non-state actors, have developed sophisticated methods to manipulate information and exploit cognitive biases in ways that are difficult to detect and yet incredibly effective. What we see now is the intensification in the competition of the information space, where narratives are weaponized to achieve strategic objectives without the need for direct military conflict. This battlefield that we see is not bound by geography. It is fought across digital platforms, traditional media, and even face-to-face interactions. The goal of these influence campaigns that I see is not necessarily to convince people of a single truth, but rather to confuse and polarize and ultimately erode the very fabric of societies that we depend upon for stability and cohesion. From the strategic perspective, it is concerning because it complicates decision-making processes in governments and militaries alike. Adversaries are shaping the environment in such a way that becomes difficult for decision makers to operate with certainty. It also erodes trust and credibility in information that is a significant strategic challenge, not only to the public perception, but also to the confidence of our allies, our partners, and even our own forces.
Yeah, that's a good take for sure. And I like the way you're describing that, really as just a vast, sprawling problem space that just horizontally and vertically across our society and culture and the institutions that we rely upon. Just stunning in the breadth and scope of the problem. So information advantage, right? I know the Army abbreviates it IA, so you might refer to it as IA as well, but information advantage. Can you explain what this concept is and its significance in modern military operations?
Sure, absolutely. Information advantage is a concept that is significant into the modern military operations. We're seeing this all around the globe. It allows commanders to collect, to process, and disseminate information more effectively than their adversaries. According to doctrine, specifically some of the most recent doctrine that we published in the Army, ADP 3-13, information advantage is defined as is achieved through the combination of technical, tactical, and operational capabilities, such as intelligence, ISR, electronic warfare, and information operations. So the goal of information operations is to provide commanders, maneuver commanders, those forward line commanders, even all the way through the service component and the geographic level, all the way down to the company level, with the necessary information to make decisions and to maintain the initiative on the battlefield. By having more information than our adversary, commanders can gain access. Commanders being able to gain access inside the adversary's decision-making cycle, just like you would using the OODA loop cycle. Another recent podcast that you had with Todd Shuck kind of talked about that a little bit. But again, this allows for us to make faster decisions and more accurate decisions than our opponent, and to continually update and adapt to their understanding of the situation based off new information. An important aspect to emphasize here is that the concept of more information, and I'm using air quotes for more information, is in the context of information is closely associated with target system analysis. Target system analysis involves the detailed examination of a target system, identifying its components and capabilities, vulnerabilities, and interrelationships. This analysis considers the target system from multiple perspectives, to include in the information advantage, where we look at three main dimensions of the physical, the informational, and the human dimensions. By understanding the target system across its dimensions of the physical, informational, and human, commanders can gain a more comprehensive understanding of the adversary or the target's decision-making processes. It makes it easier to identify their vulnerabilities and develop more effective engagement strategies. This allows them to gain access inside that adversary's decision-making cycle faster than the adversary can do to us, which enables us to make more informed and accurate decisions based on a holistic understanding of the target system. So target system analysis and information advantage are two critical components that enable the commander to both understand the target system and make more informed decisions. So by gaining access inside the commander's decision-making cycle faster, commanders can maintain the initiative and respond quickly to challenges, and ultimately achieve their objectives more effectively.
Yeah, for sure. So we also had about a year ago now, Colonel John Agnello on the podcast, and he's the program executive officer for the Information Advantage Program Office at the Army, for the Army. And so he unpacked for us the Army's new doctrinal pub, ADP 3-13, and he mentioned like 5 different information activities. We'll have a link to his discussion in the show notes as well. But he unpacked 5 different activities, excuse me: enable, protect, inform, influence, and attack. Do you think you could maybe like take your discussion of information advantage? Which of those activities does your project align on primarily, would you say?
So
All of it, or does it tend to land on one of those activities more than the others?
no, it's definitely a combination of all of those. Especially as we look at synchronizing information in the operational information environment. You know, I as a former CAV guy and armor officer, I don't believe in keeping any resources in the rear, right? Keep it all forward. And when we look at kind of what Colonel Agnello has talked about and the way that the Army views those 5 components, it's critical for us to understand that, and they all link into how we get into the adversary's decision-making cycle, so that we can make faster decisions
Hmm.
that give us that advantage. It's that ability to get inside their decision-making ability by knowing as much as we can about that enemy and that enemy or that adversary and the adversary commander, so that we can make better decisions to align forces,
Hmm.
logistics, sustainment, uh, all those things that encompass helping our maneuver forces and our commanders uh, have a strategic or operational success on the battlefield.
I see. Yeah, people uh, people have a tendency, I mean, I certainly do, to, bucket things, right? And, our historical military command structure is like, hierarchical, and you've got the S1, the S2, the S3, the S4, and so on and so forth. In families, people tend to have roles, right? There's swim lanes, right? But one of the
Yes.
things that's got to make the kinds of things that you and your colleagues are doing, Scott, so challenging is that everything kind of blends together, and there's swim lanes are kind of hard to define, and then putting together a team effort and orienting and deciding what to do is got to be part of the challenge. I realize I'm getting us a little off track here, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we see it within our own staffs, and um, we have to unblur those lines,
Mm,
those uh, just like we do with kind of like geographic boundaries, right?
mhm.
The enemy doesn't see geographic boundaries the same way that we do, right?
Yeah, right.
And so the opportunity for the adversary to run circles around us because we box ourselves in by not integrating. It has to be more, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it
Yeah,
has to be
okay.
more of like an orchestra flow, right?
Ah,
And each of the different sections and capabilities is a different instrument or different section. And I liken what the commander or the practitioners of information advantage or information operations are the conductor of that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, maybe this starts getting us into, some of the meat of your piece on synchronizing effects. So, how does synchronizing effects within the IE contribute to enhancing the commander's decision-making capabilities?
Absolutely. So, synchronizing effects within the information environment involves coordinating and integrating the physical, the informational, and human activities to achieve a desired outcome. This can be compared to a way that an orchestra conductor leads musicians. Just as the conductor uses a baton or hand gestures or eye contact, body language to ensure that his or her musicians are playing in unison, dynamics, timing, tempo. A commander uses of various techniques and resources, capabilities, and assets to synchronize effects within the information environment. By having a better understanding of the adversary's dimensions of information advantage across target systems, commanders can gain that comprehensive understanding of the target's decision-making processes, identifying their vulnerabilities and developing more effective engagement strategies. This allows them to gain access inside that adversary's decision-making cycle and be more informed and allow them to make accurate and holistic decisions and have a better understanding of the situation. So synchronizing effects within that information environment can also help commanders to anticipate and respond to emerging threats and those opportunities. To kind of get to a little bit of the meat of it, the Army's
Hmm.
ADP 313 kind of defines some of the several key principles in achieving information advantage. They talk about understanding the operational environment, integrating information operations, rapid decision making, adaptability, security, and influence. When we look at a method of how we do that, we got to start taking a look at how we're better integrating information forces and those planners into our operational planning cycles. A lot of times we don't understand as practitioners the menu of options and
Mm,
really how long it takes sometimes, depending on certain capabilities, to, like indirect fires, land when and where you want it to on the battlefield. And the way I kind of look at this is we building convergence windows for your non-kinetic effect or your non-kinetic activities or your non-lethal effects that are just like you would acetate, right? And back in the day, we had our MAKUs and our overlays, and you have your maneuver overlay and your
yeah.
intelligence overlay. It'd be the same thing. It'd be an information or CIO, combined informations overlay, but it would be able to help folks understand across time and space when your capability that you want to integrate is actually going to land where you want it to, so that it can support ultimately the maneuver forces on the ground, the logistics or sustainment, or the fires forces on the ground. And that's pretty critical. And the way that a technique of the way we've done that is using operational schedules as a way to kind of look at time and space, and how you're going to integrate these capabilities. Some things take longer to land than others, depending on its type of capability, whether it's a TIAD doing an engagement or an MDTF or a cyber capability. It's not like as fast as a tank engagement or an infantry squad engagement, but it can still have an impact when it's timed out correctly. And it's critical to start that process to synchronize in the planning process.
Yeah, yeah, cool. And you were describing this window for helping to evaluate and identify engagement opportunities, which our audience obviously cannot see the visual. But this your article is getting published. You told me in the Armor Mounted Maneuver Journal. Is that out yet, or is it
Not
forthcoming?
yet.
Not
No,
yet.
that should be coming. It's the fall 2024 edition that'll be coming out in. And in
Yeah.
that article, I go into talking about how critical it is for mounted maneuver forces to integrate a lot of these capabilities so they don't get sidelined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
just at the tactical level. At the operational and strategic level, there's the menu of options starts to open up a little bit, right? And it planners need to be able to understand the menu of options, just like you would go into like a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A and you'd see all the different
Mm-hmm.
options that there are. Um, Having that understanding and getting the right people around the table in your operational planning teams is critical, because if you want to be able to use a specific capability or an information force, you need to understand what that, the way I equate it is kind of like artillery. You got to have observation on the target. You've then got to relay that back. It's got to get loaded up. It's got to get sent through its validation processes before it gets fired, and then it gets fired. And then knowing when you're when it's going to splash in that convergence window that you need it to.
Right.
So it's critical, no matter what that capability is in those information forces, uh, that they need to be there so they can help you uh, start getting the right approvals. Because sometimes in our planning processes, when you're going through your mission analysis, you're going to quickly realize when you want something, it might take weeks to get there,
Right.
or a bit of time to land when you want it to. And that shouldn't discourage planners from not wanting to use the capability,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It just is an additional challenge that we as planners in our kind of resource constrained environments, we got to think through.
Yeah.
And we got to be able to kind of get these new technologies into that space. We've got to do it because it's going to help those folks on the ground. And ultimately, that's who we're helping at the end of the tip of the spear and giving them as many assets and capabilities to do the job that needs to get done according to the plan. And if we, our adversaries are doing the same thing. They're all trying to figure out the same way of using capabilities against us and our allies. So it's something that should actually spark some fire underneath a lot of the planners, specifically in the maneuver communities, to want to pull those experts in and pull them out of those silos, like you talked about earlier, because
Hmm.
especially in a lot of plans teams, folks can get into their foxholes pretty deep sometimes. But getting the right people around the table to do the planning effort is critical.
Yeah. To our audience, if you're listening to this, a couple of months from now, we'll have a link to Scott's article in the show notes, and you really should hit pause and check out the diagram that he's been talking about here. It's a diagram which depicts the choreograph, I guess, my word, of like non-kinetic activities and non-lethal effects, and this window where it overlays that with the kinetic operations. And for me at least, it helps snap into place some of the concepts that he's talking about. Also, I should mention that Scott is going to be presenting this concept at the upcoming InfoPack conference in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, which I think is in the latter part of October, the week of October 21st to 25th of 2024. So if you want to engage directly with Scott, you will have the opportunity to do so there. Um, uh, back back into the discussion here, Scott. So what are some of the key challenges that
Yeah.
you are observing, or want leaders to be thinking about relative to synchronization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've identified a couple key challenges that I'll go through. One of the key challenges, and these aren't in any particular order, most least. So the one of the first key challenges I see in achieving effective synchronization of information operations activities to achieve information advantage uh, is that commanders may be hesitant to incorporate these capabilities into their plans due to lack of understanding or sometimes experience. As a former OC at the National Training Center, I observed units often leave information forces in the rear area when they could have been used forward to support their operations. To overcome some of these challenges, it is important to demonstrate the effectiveness of these capabilities through the MDMP process and incorporate their impacts against adversaries into planning documents. According to Army doctrine, it's important for us to integrate information operations by integrating into all aspects of military operations, including planning and execution. These requirements are a comprehensive understanding of these capabilities, that menu of options that I talked about, and their potential impacts on an operational environment. A lot of military planners, we use when we go through our course of action analysis, and we start going through our before we go to COA comparison, we conduct a correlation of forces and means. And in the traditional sense, we look at gun for gun and what that outcome might be when we're standing on doing a combined arms rehearsal and we're rolling dice and seeing what the outcome will be,
Hmm.
with the commander. The non-lethal and non-kinetic activities also have numbers associated with that when it comes to percentages of impact on how it affects across whatever that target might be across the information dimensions, the physical, the informational, and human. Um, it's sometimes hard to calculate, but it is possible to assign that. So by addressing some of these challenges, commanders can improve their decision-making capabilities and achieve more effective synchronization of those information forces.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
A
Oh,
second,
did you have some more? Oh, okay. No,
yeah, I
yeah.
do.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
other key challenge, and we kind of talked about this a little bit up front, is the visualization piece.
Ah,
As humans, we're very visual creatures, and we need to see in order to trust or have faith in what we cannot. A significant portion of the NLE, NKA, non-lethal effects, non-kinetic activities, what they do sometimes, it is difficult to visualize during combined arms rehearsals, planning process, exercise simulations, and even in real life. So to address some of these challenges, I believe it is critical to invest in modular, augmented reality, and virtual reality simulators and tools that help commanders and planners at all levels visualize how information related capabilities or information forces integrate, support, and are synchronized to enable maneuver operations. Uh,
mhm.
this will allow them to be able to actually see the capabilities because we can replicate that, and in those kind of virtual spaces like a video game, if you will, and you can see those things having impacts on your targets or your adversaries in the operational environment. So um, it, the effective integration of this I believe is one of the other key challenges that we face, because we've all been there standing on a big map, and it's hard to really visualize when one of these information force capabilities is standing on that combined arms rehearsal, and you're trying to figure out exactly what it is actually going to do and how it's going to look when it makes its impact, right? Um, so that is, I believe, two of the key things that I want listeners to kind of to walk away with, is to answer that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that to your last suggestion there with um, uh, using virtual reality and augmented reality to assist with the training and making it more realistic. It's been on my to-do list for a while now to try to get somebody onto the podcast that's in the gaming world, and I don't mean like roll the dice and those kinds of games. Though I mean that is fantastic as well, but something more like you were just describing. Like really bleeding edge, video games, and what is it that goes into making those video games? How do you make them more realistic? Because I don't play games
Mm-hmm.
myself. I don't know why. I just don't have that bug or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I can see the value of playing games and using it to help with military training or life, life purposes. I can see where it's all going, and how it can be a helpful tool for humanity. But anyway, like I said, I've been wanting to have somebody on to talk about that whole world, and where it is, or where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. Do you play games, Scott?
Um, I, not as often as I used to, like
Yeah,
back in the
yeah,
college days.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool suggestion though, for sure. Um, so let's maybe shift over just a little bit to emerging technology, artificial
Yeah,
intelligence, machine learning
yeah.
is uh, on everybody's minds these days. Um, how do you see that playing into helping you and your colleagues negotiate this entire problem space?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, these emerging technologies, and we talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, these play a significant role in how we are going to go forward in information advantage, and helping as tools to help us with decision making. Some of the tech, some of the tech, these technologies can help us analyze vast amounts of data quickly, allow commanders to make informed decisions based off more comprehensive understanding of that operational environment. When we look at what really is the operational information environment, it spans the globe, right? So there's quite a bit of data that goes into that. AI and machine learning can also help identify patterns and trends that may not be immediately apparent to human analysts, and improving that situational awareness, right? And enabling more effective planning and execution of our operations. Our doctrine absolutely supports the use of AI and machine learning by enhancing information advantage and decision making. For example, in FM 3-13, information operations, it does state that AI and machine learning technologies can enable more effective information operations by automating repetitive tasks, right? Improving situational awareness and enhancing decision making. It also notes that these technologies can help identify and counter adversarial information operations by identifying them and improving overall mission effectiveness. So, to fully realize the potential benefits of AI and machine learning and information advantage in decision making, it is essential to invest in the development and integration of these technologies into some of our existing systems and processes, and for us to become, subject matter experts in it. This may require some changes to organizational structures and processes, obviously, but through training and education to ensure that commanders and planners are able to effectively leverage these capabilities. The benefits of being able to bring them AI, machine learning, enhances that information advantage in that decision making. Again, these emerging technologies will only help us gain the information advantage because of being able to analyze vast amounts of data quickly, identify patterns and trends, and improve situational awareness. So, kind of going forward, this is definitely a trend that we can likely see because operations of the information environment spans a huge arena, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And Scott, you are like right on the money there with some of the uh, opportunities or some of the requirements that the Army is pushing out to the world right now. As a matter of fact, like right now, so we're recording this. I,
Mhm.
I always forget to say this at the top of the episode. I need to start remembering to do so. We're recording this on the 26th of September, 2024. But right now, the Army has published to the world a couple of opportunities that go right to the heart of what you are talking about. And we'll have links in the show notes for anybody that wants to check them out. But one of the opportunities is called large language model course of action analysis, and then another one for large language model continual situational awareness. And both of those opportunities are all about, hoovering up massive amounts of data and putting into it, okay, what do we got in front of us right now, right? We're in a desert environment. It's going to be 32 degrees overnight tonight. The enemy force is 20 clicks away. Put in as much of the
Mhm.
put in as much of the situation and information about friendly forces and enemy forces in the larger operational picture, and hit enter, and give me 7 courses of action that I might not have thought about, which can help me exploit this situation. So,
Yeah.
what I heard you describing was, something going along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is an aspect, I believe, of gaining that information advantage over your adversary because
Hmm.
you've been able to take in as many of the factors that your adversary is thinking through, and then you're running it through those technologies, and the technology is playing the adversary, and you're able to see what those technologies would have your courses of action be. And that
Yeah.
I think that is kind of going forward, and we look, into the future. That's going to be very important for us to be able to have soldiers trained to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so you've been talking for the most part kinetic or like force on force engagements and using information to gain advantage in those scenarios. But if you can go back out to the 30,000 foot view, what what does information advantage contribute to a broader strategic advantage beyond just the tactical battlefield?
Yeah. So at the strategic level, to fully realize the benefits of information advantage and contribute to a broader strategic advantage, it is essential to apply the practices and principles that enable those commanders to gain and maintain information superiority throughout the planning and execution of operations, right? This requires that comprehensive approach to planning and execution, where information advantage techniques and capabilities are fully integrated into standing operations plans and contingency plans at the operational and strategic level. Because when we want something to arrive at the time and place we need it to, we got to get it into these plans. In order to achieve this, commanders should adopt a holistic approach to planning that considers the full range of information forces to include things that we know, cyber operations, EW, psychological operations, as parts of a whole. This approach should be integrated into planning processes from the outset, with focus on identifying those information-related capabilities that would help the operational leaders achieve the desired effects they want on the battlefield. Furthermore, information advantage can help to create a strategic advantage by shaping perceptions and influencing behaviors. By leveraging information across the dimensions, the physical, the informational, and the human, commanders can influence perceptions of various stakeholders, including adversaries, allies, and other populations. This can help create a favorable strategic environment that supports the achievement of strategic objectives. And making sure that we are tied in at the strategic level to the operational level, and understanding the capabilities that are needed in specific theaters and having those available and made available to forces to use is part and parcel, just one of the major challenges that we face at the strategic level. And it kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier with understanding that menu of options, getting it into plans, and then getting it fermented into plans, because plans drives the rest of our processes and operations.
Yeah, yeah, cool. It occurs to me that our audience might appreciate getting some historical examples, or some touch points in history that can help align your concepts with things that they might already be familiar with. Do you have any examples along those lines?
Absolutely. And I'm going to use the classic World War II. The historic context that I want to use is Operation Fortitude North and Operation Fortitude South. They provide excellent examples of how information advantage played a role in the outcome of the Normandy landings and the Allied invasion of Europe to liberate France. So Operation Fortitude was the overall deception plan that was employed by the Allies during World War II to mislead the Germans about the location and timing of the D-Day landings. These operations took place in two parts: Fortitude North and Fortitude South. Just a quick kind of box you in. Fortitude North was really France all the way up through about Norway, and Fortitude South was Spain through the Med, kind of that soft underbelly that we consider. The Allies employed a range of deception techniques to achieve these objectives. Let me go back real quick. So the aims of Fortitude North was to create the illusion that the Allies were planning an invasion through Norway, while Fortitude South was aimed at convincing the Germans that the main invasion force would come through Pas-de-Calais region of France rather than Normandy itself. So in doing so, the Allies employed a range of deception techniques to achieve their objectives, including the creation of things that we consider today different information forces, such as false radio traffic, use of double agents, the deployment of inflatable tanks that we've seen, or aircraft. Using a lot of the advanced technologies that they had at the time to get as much of it out operating into the information, the operational information environment, to really oversaturate the German observers, right? And what that did was it put the German commanders and decision makers on a lot of horns of dilemma, and it caused ripples in their decision-making processes. So the Allies were able to get into that OODA loop cycle and gain that information advantage by kind of shaping the way that, creating a reality, if you will, that the Germans would see, and that as a deception technique. But as a much broader, this is how back in those days, this is how we looked at what they considered deception techniques and surprise. So the success of Operation Fortitude had a significant impact on the outcome of the D-Day landings. I mean, for Fortitude, it was even down to the Air Forces doing specific bombing patterns and runs to kind of deceive them as to which direction the landings would be going based off of what land they were preparing. It successfully deceived the Germans about the location of the landing and the timing of the landings, which allowed the Allies to gain a crucial element of surprise. And that's ultimately what we're looking at for having an information advantage. This in turn enabled us to gain that foothold and continue to liberate Europe. So kind of the lessons learned from Operation Fortitude can be applied to contemporary operations and information advantage that play a critical role in achieving operational strategic objectives. One of these examples we're seeing currently, and we saw currently, such as during the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the Russians used the technique of Moskva, which is a form of military deception. That was absolutely evident. Under the guise of like the annual Zapad exercises, the Russian forces moved troops into assault positions and then catching their defenders off guard. So kind of the same kind of concepts that like Allies used doing their forced training exercises in England and in North Africa. It is absolutely a technique by putting a lot of those capabilities and signals and newspaper articles and even down to patches types out into the information space that really overwhelmed the German forces. Again, so this is definitely an example that demonstrates kind of that historic context being even related to modern military operations.
Yeah. What did you mean by patches that you said just a moment ago?
So even patches. So one of my favorite little mini stories about what they did, when they brought a lot of the American forces from America over into Europe, they actually had patch making competitions, and what that was artists from each of the different units would design these patches, and then American kind of would publish a lot of these patches and make these patches, and they would have units go around wearing different patches to really confuse any of the German observers that were trying to look at what units were there. And it also demonstrated in when they were published, some of these patch designs, it kind of gave the perception that there were more forces in England than there actually was.
Oh yeah, no, I can see how that would definitely cause some anxiety amongst the enemy troops for sure. Like what the heck is that patch? What the heck is that patch? Did you see that? Did you see what is that one? I mean, these aren't in our booklet. So yeah, wow, that's awesome. And I just recently did a little review of the Operation Mincemeat with the British during World War II, which was a year or two before the D-Day landings, maybe 1943. Yeah, but also stunning series, elaborate deception technique. Just unbelievable. We'll have to get somebody on to discuss that one someday as well. So this is the very first interview or Cognitive Crucible recording that I've done since the presumed Israeli operation in Lebanon with Hezbollah that happened just a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. What is your hot take on that kind of an operation in this framework, as
Yeah,
far from an information advantage perspective?
yeah, absolutely. Well, whether or not the Israelis conducted those types of operations, it definitely communicated across each one of those uh, dimensions: the physical, the informational, and the human dimension. Um, it looked at it. They definitely, with what they were able to do, they understood some of that target system, right, that I talked about earlier, and they kind of were able to trace that back, and realizing specific communication techniques, um, they were able to kind of clearly get in, inject themselves into that process, and then they were able to kind of use and execute with some veracity, when they needed to at a time of their choosing. So that, being able to understand that system of the targets and doing some of that deep dive, we talk about the systems analysis. I mean, we're talking not just the end product, right? Whatever
Mm-hmm,
phone
mm-hmm,
or pagers and stuff like that. But when we look at, understanding that supply chain, right? And how far back that goes,
mm-hmm,
where they
mm-hmm.
can actually cause an effect, and how far down that system that needs to go. Um, it
Right.
was,
Right,
yeah,
right, right. So, I mean, for all we know, again, we're recording this on September 26th, and for all we know, just armchair quarterback speculating stuff. I mean, this could be like right in, the Scott Hall playbook of you've got like well, I mean, the activities that we're talking about have some kinetic aspects to it, but relatively non-kinetic, I suppose, compared to what it could be. So you've got this like prep of the battlefield that happens before the main effort. And
exactly.
again, I refer our audience back to that diagram in Scott's paper that'll be coming out shortly. So just stunning.
Yeah.
Um, uh, what other, I mean, so starting to, wrap up here a little bit, Scott, what are some of the future trends and developments in information operations that you and your colleagues are talking about, and some of the
Yeah.
potential implications for achieving information advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in some of these circles, we're talking about things like future visualization tools, right? Being able to use those advanced utilization tools, such as that augmented reality, virtual
Hmm.
reality, will become increasingly important in this space. These tools will be able to help not just us as planners, but also those commanders understand and visualize complex scenarios to make better informed decisions. Just like the scenario we talked about earlier with being able to pull in a lot of data and use artificial intelligence to help you create a lot of course of action. That is definitely the future. Additionally, joint force information force coordination and application. We all understand that we all support the joint forces, right? And the integration of information across all domains and services will continue to be critical and contribute to the future, tying into not just what Army does, but it's critical to tie into what Air Force does, the Navy does, the Marines do, Space Force does. That will require a lot of development of like new methods for coordinating and synchronizing operations across the joint forces,
Hmm.
as well as integrating those new technologies and capabilities that each of the services bring to the fight, right? That menu of options. So the establishment of kind of joint information operations centers, in my opinion, this is just me, brainchild of mine, that helps with a common operational picture,
Hmm.
and helps with shared understanding and situation awareness is key. And then also leveraging across the dime, the diplomatic, information, military, and economic framework will become increasingly important in this space. Uh, we understand and recognize that information operations and achieving information advantage is not just a military activity, it is a whole of government approach. By leveraging the dime and helping support that, commanders are better able to coordinate and synchronize across all domains and services for a more comprehensive and integrated approach to achieving that information advantage that we talked about. And then again, I'll just make one last you know point on artificial intelligence and machine learning. The use of that technology is going to help our practitioners make faster decisions, right? A lot of the repetitive things will be able to go away, and we'll be able to make decisions faster and really help those commanders make faster decisions and be inside that OODA loop cycle of our adversaries by being able to automate and consume a lot of those big data sets.
Right, right. That's good stuff. All right. Well, wrapping up in typical fashion here, we have a lot of students and researchers who are interested in this podcast and our listeners. Could you offer
Yeah,
a research question or two that an
sure.
interested student or researcher might take a crack at in order to advance some dialogue in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things kind of come to mind. One, what role can artificial intelligence and machine learning play in processing vast amounts of data and identifying patterns and trends in the information advantage dimensions? Also, what are some of the challenges and opportunities associated with integrating information advantage across all domains and services? And how can joint information forces uh, coordination and application be improved? So those are some of the a couple of research topics that I think some go-getters would be really good at sinking their teeth into.
Yeah, yeah, you bet. And then finally, Scott, could you offer a book suggestion that maybe touches on some of these themes, or it could just be something that you've got
Yeah,
on your nightstand right now?
yeah. So a couple things. Barton Whaley's Stratagem. It's a thick book, but it talks about and he provides a wonderful discussion on his study of military operations and surprise. And the way that they looked at surprise can be equated to how we use um, information forces in the operational information environment today. Another one is one of my favorite ones, another really thick read, just like Stratagem, but Thaddeus Holt's The Deceivers. That is a great walk through history on the Allies' operations in North Africa and the Middle East and the Med and all the way up through Europe, how they did what they did to conduct Fortitude North, Fortitude South, and some of the big players back then. And you really get to see just how like a lot of activities happened in the operational information environment in those days to make Normandy happen, right? Another good one would be Jonathan Gwain's Ghosts of the ETO, American Tactical Deception Units in the European Theater. And then finally, one of my favorites I like to read every once in a while again and again would be August Cole and P.W. Singer's Ghost Fleet. It really looks at kind of futuristic into modern technology and how information forces play a big role in that and achieving information advantage.
All right. Scott Hall, thank you so much for being a guest on the Cognitive Crucible.
Thank you, John.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.